My mom announced, "I'm taking charge of your finances," and I laughed, until she froze my bank account. When I asked, "Why would you do that?" she said, "To teach you a lesson." The next day, something unthinkable happened. I'm 34, recently divorced, child-free, and living in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I work remotely as a marketing consultant, and I've been supporting myself since I was 19. I've never asked my mom for a cent since moving out. My marriage to Marcus fell apart 3 years ago, amicably enough, but my mother's interest in my life quadrupled after that. My mom, Joan, is 63. She's a retired high school principal. The type of woman who color-coded the pantry, alphabetized her spices, and timed how long you should chew each bite as a child. Control wasn't just her default, it was her oxygen. After the divorce, I moved into her house temporarily while I sorted myself out emotionally and financially. I was there for 3 months, and it felt like I was 17 again. I gave her access to one of my bank accounts, an old shared savings account I didn't use much. It was supposed to be a short-term thing, to help me transfer a few bills while I moved money between banks. I forgot she still had access. Last fall, my great-aunt Ruth passed away and left me $85,000 in her will. It was unexpected but very appreciated. I paid off my lingering credit card debt, booked a trip to Italy with some friends, delayed 3 times because of COVID, and put the rest into a long-term index fund. I also got my car fixed and treated myself to a few weekends away in Asheville and Charleston. Nothing insane. No designer bags, no random shopping sprees, no Vegas. I told my mom about the inheritance during one of our Sunday lunches, not because I had to, but because I thought she'd be happy for me. Instead, she looked at me like I told her I'd decided to join a cult. "You're not saving for a house?" she asked. "I don't want to own property right now." "Clara, that's a waste. You're 34. You can't just float through life. What about your future?" That was her favorite thing to say. What about your future? As though choosing joy and self-preservation was the same thing as setting fire to a retirement fund. Over the next few months, I noticed her tone shifting. If I posted a photo of a wine tasting or a spa weekend, she'd call within a day. "Must be nice," she'd mutter. "I hope you're not draining that inheritance." I'd brush her off. But the comments never stopped. Then, 3 weeks ago, I came back from Asheville after a relaxing 3-day weekend. That evening, she FaceTimed me out of the blue. She was sitting in her kitchen, wearing the look she used to give students right before they were sent to detention. "I need to talk to you," she said. "Okay? I'm taking control of your finances." "What?" She laid it out like she was doing me a favor. She said she was tired of watching me make irresponsible decisions. That I needed guidance. That I was emotionally unwell after the divorce and not thinking clearly. I laughed. I thought she was joking. Then she told me she had frozen my checking account. The same one connected to our old shared savings account. "You what?" "I've spoken to the bank. I'm protecting you, Clara. From yourself." I immediately checked the app. My account was locked. A fraud hold was placed on it pending internal review. I was locked out of my own money. It felt like the air was sucked out of the room. I texted her. I called. I begged. I demanded. Her tone never changed. "You'll thank me one day," she said. I felt completely powerless. I couldn't even pay my rent until I rerouted things through another account. The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it ring, still fuming from the night before. Then the same number called again. And again. I picked up, annoyed. "Ms. Rowe? This is Deputy Morgan with the Orange County Sheriff's Department. We received a report from your mother, Joan Rowe, claiming you've been engaging in elder financial abuse." I sat in silence. "She alleges that you manipulated her into giving you access to her bank accounts, and that you've been withdrawing funds under false pretenses." My jaw went slack. What? She filed a formal complaint. We're obligated to follow up. Would you be able to come in for a statement? The woman on the other end wasn't rude, but she wasn't exactly warm either. I could tell she didn't know what to believe yet. My mother had not only locked me out of my own account, but she was trying to frame me as some kind of con artist to gain legal control. I called my friend Allison, who was a lawyer. She immediately put me in touch with Dana Whitaker, a local family law attorney who specialized in guardianship abuse and financial disputes. Dana was calm and incredibly sharp. Within 2 hours, she had the full picture. This isn't about her money, Dana said. It's about control. She's trying to either get conservatorship over you or scare you into total submission. Over the next few days, I compiled every record I had: text messages, emails, bank statements, old documents. Thankfully, I had plenty of paper trails proving the account she accessed was legally mine. The damage, though, wasn't just legal. Word spread in our small Chapel Hill community. My mother is known. Respected. She taught half the town. Suddenly, family friends weren't returning my messages. One neighbor told me, with a sympathetic whisper, "Your mom said you'd been having breakdowns since the divorce. She said you were making unstable choices." She was painting me as mentally unfit. I didn't sleep for days. I cried in the middle of emails, during walks, at stoplights. My own mother was trying to rewrite who I was, and I wasn't sure anyone would believe me. Dana helped me get the bank account reinstated, but that was just the beginning. The letter arrived on a Monday. A formal legal complaint from Joan's attorney. She was suing me for emotional distress, manipulation, and theft. She wanted full legal and financial oversight. I couldn't even process it. I just sat in the middle of my living room floor, clutching the envelope, as my dog crawled into my lap and licked my hand like she knew something was wrong. Dana filed a counterclaim, pushing to have my mother barred from access to any financial institution I used. She explained that this could go 2 ways: we could settle it quietly through arbitration, or go to court. I chose court. The day of the court hearing felt surreal. I wasn't on trial for a crime, but emotionally, it felt like I was. Walking into that courtroom felt like walking into a family funeral, except the person laying in the casket was the version of family I thought I still had. Joan was already there when I arrived, seated stiffly next to her attorney. She was wearing a tailored navy suit, hair perfectly set, her reading glasses on the edge of her nose. She didn't look at me. Not once. It was like I was invisible. Dana leaned toward me and whispered, "Don't be thrown by her presentation. We're here for facts." I nodded, clutching the file folder I brought. Inside were screenshots of her texts, emails with timestamps, evidence of the bank account being solely in my name, and even the original joint account paperwork from years ago, showing that I had removed her as a co-signer shortly after I moved out. The only reason she still had online access was because I hadn't thought to change the login. The judge, a middle-aged woman named Judge Ferris, had a calm but penetrating demeanor. She listened closely as Joan's lawyer gave a detailed, theatrical account of how Joan had feared for her safety and well-being, and how I had emotionally manipulated her into giving access to her finances. I didn't say anything. I just kept my eyes on the judge. When it was Dana's turn, she walked her through everything, starting with the financial records, then Joan's texts, including the one where she literally said, "I froze your account to teach you a lesson," and finally a notarized letter from Aunt Ruth's attorney clarifying that the inheritance was mine and mine alone. Judge Ferris flipped through everything slowly, and then looked at Joan over the rim of her glasses. "Mrs. Rowe," she said, "do you have any documentation to support your claims that these accounts belong to you, or that your daughter manipulated you?" Joan opened her mouth, hesitated, then closed it. "She spent the money recklessly," she said finally. "She's throwing her life away. I was trying to help her get back on track. She's alone, she doesn't think clearly." It hit me then, she really believed she was helping. Or maybe, she'd convinced herself she did. Either way, she wasn't just trying to control me. She was trying to erase me. The judge shook her head. That may be your opinion, but that doesn't give you legal authority to access or control an adult's financial life, especially without consent. I'm dismissing your complaint and granting the protective motion requested by the respondent. Effective immediately, you are barred from accessing any personal or financial accounts in your daughter's name. Dana let out a soft breath. Joan looked stunned. I didn't speak to her on the way out. She didn't try to stop me. The fallout after the hearing wasn't immediate, it was slow, creeping, like a storm you can see miles out but can't stop. I went no contact the day after court. I blocked her number, took her off my emergency contacts, notified all my banks and institutions to never authorize any shared access requests. Dana also advised me to do a full identity check, just in case Joan tried to open anything in my name or dig into my finances again. But the emotional side of it, that was harder. I started therapy twice a week. My therapist, Lenora, helped me unpack what had happened, not just in court, but over the years leading up to it. We talked about how control had always been the currency my mom used, how she used guilt like a scalpel, always precise and always just sharp enough to make you bleed without noticing. I began to remember things from childhood that suddenly made sense. The way she tracked my periods in high school so she could make sure I was healthy. The way she intercepted letters from colleges that weren't within 100 miles of home. The time she threw out my sketchbooks because drawing won't pay the bills. Control had never been about safety. It had always been about erasing my autonomy, little by little. Even after the legal drama, I kept receiving calls from old family friends, some siding with me, others tiptoeing around the situation. One distant cousin wrote a long email explaining that Joan was worried sick about me and that I should show her some grace. Grace? What grace had she shown me when she tried to make me out to be a thief? Still, I didn't retaliate. I didn't post anything on social media. I didn't go around town talking about it. Not because I was trying to protect her, but because I was trying to protect myself. I didn't want this story to define me. I started shifting my energy into rebuilding. I opened a new business account under an LLC and began separating all my finances under legal structures she couldn't touch. I created new passwords, new logins, new recovery emails. I moved, too. Got a new apartment in Durham, just far enough from Chapel Hill to feel like a reset. It was a small 2-bedroom with a balcony and a view of the trees. Quiet. No more surprise drop-ins. And then came the silence. No more calls. No emails. Not even gossip from mutual acquaintances. It was like she'd erased me from her world in return. For a few weeks, that silence was terrifying. Like I was waiting for her to strike again. But then it turned into peace. Like breathing air I hadn't tasted in decades. I began cooking again. Reading. Spending time with friends without needing to explain or justify my choices. Allison came over one night with wine and said, "You seem more like you than I've ever seen." And it hit me, I'd been living under her weight for so long, I didn't even realize how heavy it was until it was gone. But this isn't the end. There's more that happened after the silence, something I never saw coming. It was about 6 weeks after the court hearing when the silence finally cracked, not with a phone call or a knock on my door, but a certified letter. I recognized the handwriting immediately. My mother still wrote in cursive like it was 1964. I let it sit on the counter for a full day before I opened it. I wasn't ready. I didn't want to fall back into the spiral I'd just climbed out of. But curiosity, or maybe a trace of guilt I hadn't fully shaken, finally got the better of me. Inside was a 2-page handwritten letter. Not an apology. Not even close. It was a list of grievances, everything from how humiliated she felt in court to how I blindsided her with my coldness. She blamed the therapist. She blamed influences she didn't name. She even mentioned Aunt Ruth's inheritance again, as though that was the root of my sudden disobedience. But the part that made my stomach twist wasn't the anger. It was this line, "I never raised you to be this ungrateful. I gave you everything. And I would do it all over again if it meant keeping you safe, even from yourself. She still didn't understand that what she did wasn't protective. It was invasive. And cruel. I didn't respond. A week later, a neighbor from Chapel Hill sent me a message on Facebook. She wanted to let me know that Joan had started attending a new church across town and had joined a grief support group, even though no one had died recently. Apparently, she'd been telling people I had cut off contact due to emotional instability and was struggling with issues beyond her control. I felt rage bubble up again. Not just because she was still trying to control the narrative, but because she was doing it with such ease, slipping into the role of the victim like a tailored coat. But I didn't act on it. I had learned by now that responding only fed her justification. Still, part of me kept watching. Quietly. I'd check her public Facebook now and then. I wasn't proud of it, but it was like picking at a scab, ugly, but oddly satisfying in a shameful way. Then one night, I got a text from my cousin Elise. "Hey. I'm sorry to reach out like this, but you need to know something. Aunt Joan, she's been meeting with a lawyer again. I overheard her talking about trying to get reconsidered for financial guardianship." My hands went numb. I hadn't considered that she might come back around and try again. I assumed the courtroom slapdown would have been enough to dissuade her, or at least make her retreat quietly. I called Dana the next morning. She wasn't surprised. Sometimes when people like your mom don't get what they want the first time, they regroup. They look for new angles. She might be trying to gather new claims, find a different legal path, or build a stronger emotional case. But she already lost. She lost on the facts, Dana said. But in her mind, she's still right. That makes her dangerous in a different way. We submitted new protective filings that barred her from accessing any legal authority over my finances or healthcare without my express, notarized consent. Dana also recommended I talk to a family mediator, not to reconcile, but to document that I had made a formal refusal to enter into any dependent arrangement with Joan. A paper trail for the future. It was exhausting. Every step felt like trying to put out a fire while the arsonist stood nearby, claiming she was just trying to keep you warm. In therapy, I talked to Lenora about how the betrayal felt deeper than just legal invasion. It was existential. My mother didn't just want to manage my finances, she wanted to overwrite my identity. To build a version of me that existed only inside her comfort zone. I had to let go of the fantasy that she would ever see me for who I was. Still, grief showed up in unexpected ways. I'd be walking through Target and see something she liked, those lemon cookies she used to hoard in the freezer, and suddenly my throat would tighten. I missed the idea of a mother. Not Joan, exactly, but the version of her I sometimes imagined in soft focus memory. The one who made cinnamon toast for me when I had the flu. The one who used to braid my hair before church and told me I had lioness eyes. But those moments were always followed by the other memories. The manipulation. The quiet punishments. The silent treatment that could stretch for days if I dared to push back. There was no going back. I started journaling again. I wrote down everything, every detail of the court case, every manipulation I could remember, every red flag I ignored. It wasn't for anyone else. It was for me. To remind myself that I hadn't made this up. That I wasn't crazy or cruel. That I had survived something. It helped. I began to feel whole again, in pieces. Some days, I even laughed, really laughed. At dumb shows. At weird memes Allison sent me at 2 a.m. laughter I hadn't realized I'd been withholding for months, maybe years. And then, when I was least expecting it, something else happened. A letter arrived, not from Joan this time, but from a law firm in Charlotte. At first, I thought it was spam. But when I opened it, my hands began to shake. It was about Aunt Ruth's estate. Apparently, there had been a second envelope in her will, one that named Joan as the secondary executor if I ever became unfit or unavailable. It had never been triggered before because I had filed my claim within the correct legal window. But someone, likely Joan, had contacted the firm asking for a review of that clause. They declined her request. Still, it unnerved me. She was trying every possible backdoor. She wasn't done. The letter from the law firm was my final wake-up call. I couldn't keep pretending this would fade on its own. Joan wasn't letting go, and if I didn't act, she'd eventually find another loophole, another narrative, another way back into my life, and my finances. But I also didn't want to spend the rest of my life defending myself against her drama. I needed a way to close this chapter, fully, permanently, and ideally, on my terms. That's when I remembered something my therapist, Lenora, had said early on. You don't always beat people like Joan with confrontation. You beat them by removing the stage they're performing on. At first, I didn't understand what that meant. But over the next few days, it clicked. Joan's power wasn't just in the legal moves or financial meddling. It was in the story. Her version of it. The version she shared with our family, with neighbors, with church ladies and support groups. She thrived on being perceived as the noble mother to an unstable daughter. So I took the story away from her. It started with a letter. Not to Joan. But to everyone else. I wrote a clear, calm, factual message and sent it individually, not blasted out, but addressed to the specific people who had been misled or confused. Cousins, neighbors, family friends, former colleagues of hers who still commented on my Facebook page occasionally. The letter outlined everything. The inheritance was mine legally, confirmed by the firm managing Aunt Ruth's estate. Joan had accessed my private bank account without permission. She had filed a false report of elder abuse, and it was dismissed in court with documented evidence. She was barred by court order from accessing or managing any of my affairs. And finally, that I had chosen no contact, not out of spite, but out of self-protection after repeated violations of trust and boundaries. I attached documentation for those who wanted verification, nothing aggressive, just clean facts. I didn't ask them to choose sides. I didn't insult her. I simply laid out the truth. I heard nothing for a week. Then, the phone calls started coming. First, from my Aunt Marion. I had no idea, she said quietly. She told us such a different version. I feel sick. Then a message from an old neighbor. Clara, I'm so sorry. We should have asked you first. Even Elise, my cousin who had warned me earlier, told me that Joan had been quietly removed from the church's grief support group. Apparently, some of the women confronted her after reading my letter. She'd denied everything, of course, but when one of them mentioned the court documents, she stormed out and never came back. Her stage was shrinking. Then, in a twist I didn't see coming, I got a call from the principal of Joan's former school. They were doing a retrospective newsletter for retired staff and had originally included a story Joan submitted about navigating family challenges as a caregiver. The principal had seen my letter, forwarded by a mutual friend. She reached out to let me know they'd pulled the piece. She didn't say more than that, but I could read between the lines. Joan's narrative was collapsing. Not in a dramatic, fall from grace kind of way. But in the quiet, crushing way that matters most to someone like her, silence. No audience. No allies. No echo chamber. The last piece of the puzzle came a few weeks later when I received notice from the law firm handling Aunt Ruth's estate that all executorship concerns were formally closed. Joan was flagged as non-viable for future administrative authority based on court findings and documented interference. She was now, in legal terms, untrustworthy. And for Joan, that meant more than any confrontation I could have ever had. Her image was everything. Her reputation as competent, put together, principled, that was her currency. Now, she had none. I never heard from her directly again. And that, somehow, was the most satisfying revenge of all. Not yelling. Not lawsuits. Just truth, shared plainly, allowed to do its work. The final act of closure came one quiet afternoon, when I got an email from a woman named Caroline. She was the daughter of one of Joan's old friends. We'd only met once at a barbecue years ago. She wrote, "Hi Clara. I don't know if you remember me, but I just wanted to say I read what you wrote. My mom and I talked about it for a long time. You have no idea how much it helped us understand some of the things we've experienced with our own family. Thank you for sharing. I hope you're finding peace now." I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I realized I hadn't just taken back my story. I'd reclaimed my voice. And maybe, in doing that, I helped someone else find theirs too. It's been over a year now. My life isn't perfect, but it's mine again. My business is doing well. I've started hosting a monthly dinner for women in the area who are dealing with toxic parents. Some are estranged. Some are still finding the courage. We don't give each other advice. We just listen. And for a lot of us, that's more healing than anything. As for Joan? I honestly don't know where she stands now. And I don't need to.